Thank you, Kim. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you for having me. I looked on before I start with this, I looked on the weather app today. It's supposed to get up to 96 degrees in Phoenix today. Where I'm from in Salt Lake City, it's still ski season. And I think when I get home, I'm going to go skiing just because it was 96 degrees in Phoenix today. All right, let me make sure I know how to use this. Yep. I got it. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. I'm Vic Howell. And as Kim said, the reliability and security workshops here, they focus on a lot of oversight topics. You all here, you know compliance, you know the oversight stuff really well. And you may not be familiar with the other aspects of WECC, because there's a lot of them. And so today you're going to get a glimpse of some of these other aspects of WECC, but more importantly, I want you to learn about how these other aspects really relate to each other and how they work together to support our reliability mission in a holistic way. And it's funny, before I came to work for WECC, I had been, working for companies that had been audited, and I actually worked with many of the WECC committees. But until I joined WECC, I had no idea myself about all the things that WECC does. So when I started with the company, I was like, holy cow, there's a lot here that I had no idea about. So we're going to go over some of those things. I appreciated in Ben's presentation, he started with why and sort of ended some things with why. I want to talk to you about WECC's why. There's a fellow named Simon Sinek, and he has some YouTube videos. And he was on one of the TED Talk videos a while back. And the premise of the discussion was called Start with Why. So the idea there is he says, a lot of companies know what they do. Most companies know how they do it, but very few companies really know why they do what they do. So his idea is you start with why, get to the how, and then finally cover the what. He said Apple Computer's why is to challenge the status quo and think differently. How do they do that? By creating beautifully designed, simple to use, user-friendly products that enrich people's lives. And we also create great computers. So when we talk about WECC's why, and I'm not talking about the rules and the things we have to do through our delegation agreement, things like that. I'm talking about like a why that really connects the heart and mind. So why does WECC exist? So our why says electricity is an integral part of the fabric of modern life. WECC strengthens that fabric to preserve and improve society's future. That's really why we do what we do. So if you look at that diagram, it's kind of a play on fabric. So you all are all those blue fibers in that fabric. And WECC is that shiny, jolly, candy-like golden fabric through there. So, we all know and we've all seen what happens to society when the lights go out. Not a pretty thing. So we'll talk about WECC's mission. WECC's mission is to effectively and efficiently mitigate risks to the reliability and security of the Western Interconnection's bulk power system. And continuing on that fabric thing, this is going to be a thread throughout the discussion today. You're going to hear me say that a lot. In fact, let's make this fun. Whenever I say WECC's mission or something that sounds like WECC's mission, somebody shouts, bingo, I hear it, there it is. There's that mission again, it shows up. So I'm going to be listening for that. I may even prompt you. We need to get some audience participation here today. And this mission is becoming more and more the lens through which we view really all of what we do at WECC. And it's kind of part of our transformation journey, so to speak. So that's why we do what we do. That's our mission. So how does it manifest? How do we do it? So let's get into that. We do it through our independence, partnership, and perspective. We do it through our delegated functions, and we do it through our impact areas. And these are the main three. We have a document online called our long-term strategy. It's actually a really good read. You may not hear people really say that and be too proud of that, but it's very good. So regarding a few things that it says, so regarding our independence, it says our diverse body of stakeholders look to and rely upon us as the impartial and unbiased voice on matters that impact reliability in the interconnection. Regarding our partnership, we collaborate and coordinate across a wide array of stakeholders to identify, evaluate, and reduce risks to the reliability and security of the interconnection. Regarding our perspective, as the only entity in the Western Interconnection, in the West with an interconnection-wide view, our perspective and role allow us to analyze a wide variety of data, which assists in identifying and mitigating broad risks to reliability and security. And of course, part of that also includes, what we monitor performance to ensure reliability and security and make sure those things are front and center, and that's an aspect with which you all are quite familiar. So that's our independence, partnership, and perspective, and you'll see that as we go through the presentation today. Another aspect is through our delegated functions. So when I say delegated functions, what am I talking about? Well, there are certain functions that NERC has delegated to WECC to perform, and all those are spelled out in our delegation agreement between NERC and each of the regions. I'll be talking about a lot of delegated functions today. And finally, we have our impact areas, and these are taken from our long-term strategy. Again, good read, go check it out. And this is one of them. There are 5 of them, and this is one that's written out there. It says, we are an organization aligned around risk reduction. Our holistic risk-based approach uses all the tools and skills available to deliver comprehensive risk mitigation strategies. Tools and skills, tools and skills. So what are we talking about, tools and skills? Well, in this context, we're talking about a broad spectrum of tools that we have in our toolkit. So we have the spectrum, you see it there. There's a lot of stuff here. What you all are probably quite familiar with is sort of the far end on the left in the red space, reliability and security oversight, that sort of then dips into reliability standards and standards development. But there's a lot of other stuff. And again, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff until I came to work for WECC. So today I'm not going to talk about that stuff on the left end. I'm going to focus on all the other aspects of WECC. And I want to make sure you see how they all sort of work together to sort of paint the reliability picture to support our mission. I didn't say it, so nobody say bingo yet. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So I know this might be a stretch, but by show of hands, has anyone in the room ever heard of a thing called a reliability standard? I know it's a stretch. So you guys know all about them. They're powerful tools to address reliability and security of the interconnection. There's 2 major types. There's continent-wide standards, and there's regional standards or regional variances. And the reason you have regional variances or regional standards is maybe there's a need to have a more stringent requirement, or maybe there's something that a standard doesn't cover that we want to make sure is covered in our interconnection. So what is WECC's role in all this? WECC participates in both efforts through primarily a standards committee. There's a NERC standards committee, and there's a WECC standards committee. And there are pretty rigorous processes that need to be followed in both the WECC process and the NERC process. Another way that WECC participates in this space is that we do comment and vote on the NERC projects. I don't have to tell you all know that the industry is being asked to develop a whole slew of reliability standards around IBRs. There's FERC Order 901 with some very tight deadlines and some pretty specific performance requirements in that space. So let's talk a little bit, just an overview, high-level teaser about the process. So the standards committee, they oversee the process. They oversee the very rigorous process. They don't write the standards. They don't approve the standards. So you can see the process here. There's the authorization and posting of a standards authorization request, or a SAR. Then it moves to the step of appointing a standards drafting team. Then the standard drafting team, they draft the standard, collect some informal feedback, and then they post for ballot, post for comment and ballot. And then based on the responses of that, they consider, revise, and post, and then consider, revise, and post, consider, revise, and hopefully don't get stuck in that loop too many times before it actually gets approved, and then it goes to board adoption, and then the regulatory agencies approve it and implement it. And so this is a little teaser, as I believe the next speaker is actually going to cover the standards development process in more detail. So this is a little teaser. So this is prime the pump for that presentation up next. Okay, let's jump into some other areas. So WECC's ability to effectively and efficiently mitigate risks to the reliability and security of WECC, of the Western Interconnection bulk power system. There you go. There's that mission again. Y'all are going to have this mission memorized when you go home, and that's a good thing. So if you're an owner and an operator of the system, or if you work for a company that does that, you know how critical situational awareness is. This is one of our delegated functions, and it helps support the reliable operation of the bulk power system. What it's all about is about those two sub-bullets. It maintains real-time, near real-time situational awareness of significant conditions of emergencies and facilitates information exchange with industry and other government agencies. So when we say situational awareness, whose awareness is it really for? Well, it's primarily for NERC's situational awareness, for FERC situational awareness, for the other regions, although there are some aspects of the situational awareness program that are for broader consumption. We'll get to that. This is probably not the best known function that WECC performs, because there's a lot of work done behind the scenes, and not a lot of it's very public, so to speak. We have a slew of real-time and near real-time tools, and sort of the way it works is there's someone on duty for situational awareness duty at WECC, and it's not a 24/7 kind of operation. It's a sort of day job kind of thing, but they receive that information and they share that information on an ongoing basis. So the team helps to collect information, analyze information, and they're looking at system disturbances and incidents that impact the reliability of the bulk power system. As an example, some of the things that the situation awareness team does is it monitors big weather systems that come through, like heat waves or major storms, and they work with the RC. There's a lot of communication between the situation awareness groups and the reliability coordinators for information sharing and information flow. And we stay on top of those kinds of events, before the event, during the event, and after the event, and maintain constant communication with NERC and FERC and the other regions. There's a lot of work on wildfire. I know wildfires is a huge concern for you all. There's a lot of work that we do with that. The situation awareness team, they monitor a lot of different websites and a lot of different tools, and they collaborate with a lot of entities in the West to really understand how wildfires impact the transmission system. And we send regular reports to WECC management and to NERC staff. The team also produces, weekly wildfire reports during the hot season, the wildfire season, and making sure that we cover active wildfires, transmission lines that are impacted by voltage class, and forecasted wildfire conditions. We also do a wildfire data request that we use that information to do some analysis and understanding about the impact of wildfires over the course of time. Another thing that we do, and this is one of the public-facing aspects, we have a tool called the WECC Wildfire Dashboard. And if you're not familiar with it, I really encourage you to go to our website and to check it out. It's a free resource, and it's really chock full of some great information that your companies may find useful. It's free, and it's a really great visualization tool. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it. So this tool allows you to not only see where the wildfires are on a map, but it allows you to overlay the BES. So you can see how close these fires are to BES facilities, and you can track that over time. It's great. It really assists in operations planning, and I think it helps utilities and asset owners. One of the things we're looking into the possibility of is to adding a historical component to that. So good stuff. Check it out. So that's situation awareness. There's an extension of our situation awareness is our infrastructure security function, and this too is a delegated function. And of course, when I'm talking about infrastructure security, I'm talking about physical security and cybersecurity. So what is it? What's it all about? Well, the point of it is to monitor and report infrastructure security incidents. And we receive a lot of that information and report a lot of that information. Our industry partners, our government agencies and ERO partnerships are really important to maintaining that awareness of the risks and to developing risk mitigation strategies. We receive a lot of information regarding security threats and vulnerabilities from a whole slew of entities, and I won't go through who they are. If you're interested in that, I've got a list here. I can share that with you. EISAC is a big player in this space. And let me make a plug for EISAC. If your company is not a member of EISAC, I strongly encourage you to plug in. You likely are, but if you're not, it's a free resource, and I encourage you to join. It's free. And they provide a lot of resources to assist members in identifying, protecting, detecting, and responding and recovering from security threats. So check it out if you haven't been plugged in. Another way we, and this is less of the real-time aspect, but more of the forward-looking aspect, is we have a couple of technical committees that are centric to reliability, to infrastructure security. We have the Physical Security Forum and the Cybersecurity Forum. And those are a gathering of subject matter experts in that space. They discuss challenges, they share best practices, and they even review like anonymized events for discussion. So if you're not a part of that and you want to be, it's there. You can go to our website, navigate to the committees section, and you can find the Physical Security Forum and Security Forum, and you can plug in if you'd like to. Regarding our outreach and engagement programs, we have our Power System Security Conference coming up this year. This is the 3rd annual conference, and they have been well attended. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from that. It's going to be August 12th through the 14th at the WECC offices. It's an in-person event only. I'm sure you'll be hearing about it. It'll be all over our webpage. So stay tuned for that. And we encourage you and your companies to join if you want to find out more about what's happening in that space. Okay, I've spent a lot of time on situation awareness. I won't spend as much time on some of these other topics going forward. So through our situation awareness function, we gain an awareness of the important reliability issues, and we see this kind of day in and day out. Now, this leads to the next way that lives out our mission. There you go. Good man. Our mission to effectively and efficiently mitigate reliability and security risks to the Western Interconnection bulk power system. So this leads us to our performance analysis and data analytics function. So let's talk a little bit about that. Performance analysis is another delegated function. What is it all about? It involves the collection of data and the analysis, the maintenance of that data, the integrity, ensuring the integrity of that data, and the analysis of that data, which then feeds into the calculation of a lot of reliability metrics, and to help us understand how the system is performing. You see in parentheses, we have the GADS data, the TADS data. If you're not familiar with those, GADS is Generation Availability Data System. TADS is Transmission Availability Data System, and MIDAS is Misoperation Information Data Analysis System. So the performance analysis program, it collects a lot of operational data from the BPS system, transmission generation protection system, and analyzes that to understand and evaluate the performance of the system, like I said. And it really fulfills an important role in the ERO mission because it provides an unbiased, data-driven look at bulk power system reliability. And of course, that helps us understand the challenges, and it informs future-looking assessments as well. Now, a lot of this work in the performance analysis space, it culminates in an annual report, an annual NERC report called the State of Reliability Report. Some of you might have heard of it. Again, I'm going to tell you all to check this thing out if you haven't seen it before. You can go to NERC's website and look at the State of Reliability Report. All of the regions work with NERC, we collaborate with NERC, and it's a collective product. And it covers a lot of things that evaluates the performance of the system based on historical data. So it's kind of a backward-looking sort of thing. And it covers weather events, outage rates, generation and transmission metrics, IBR performance, a whole slew of things. And they've recently split it up. I think there's a version of the report that's more geared toward policymakers and decision makers, and there's another version of the report that's more for the techies that really want to dive into some of the weeds. So it's good. So I encourage you to check out NERC's State of Reliability Report. Another thing that WECC does in this space is we build and maintain some visualization tools for public consumption for the stakeholders. The WECC transmission map is one of those. You may have seen it. You may have one on your wallboard at home. Of course you have one on your wallboard at home. Who doesn't? So another one of WECC's public-facing products is the System Performance Data Portal, and this is a good one. This is, as you know, because you provide this data, WECC collects a lot of data, and we want to share a lot of that data that we receive back to the stakeholders in a meaningful way that adds value to you all. So one of the ways we do that is through the System Performance Data Portal. So what is it? It's a resource. It's a source that's got maps, it's got graphics, it's got a lot of data related to the reliability of the grid. And it relies on a lot of different data sets. Some of those data sets are public data sets that you can get to, but we've already done it and made it look nice. For example, there's a lot of information from EIA, or the Energy Information Administration. Some of it comes from our DADs and GADs and some other NERC mandated sort of NERC reporting. And anyway, one of the things I want to make sure you all understand is when there are statistics that are based on sensitive data, all of that is aggregated to preserve confidentiality, so nothing's getting out that shouldn't get out. There's a lot of information in there that I think you'll find useful. It's got, and it's a look at sort of the whole Western Interconnection. If you go into these areas, you can filter by balancing authority, or you can look at the whole interconnection as a whole. So good information. You might, if you see there, one of the items on there says registration and compliance, and you might have said, what kind of compliance information is WECC sharing on that data portal? Fear not. So I'll tell you about a little bit about what that is. So the registration and compliance area shows the number of registrations by function, and so you can see how many different registrations we have by the different functions. And it also shows the number of potential non-compliance P&Cs that you all know all about, the number of them. And it also shows the discovery method, like whether they were discovered through self-reports or they were discovered through audits. And you can actually even filter down to specific standards. So if you're interested to see how many P&Cs were associated with a particular standard, you can drill down and check that out. So that is the WECC System Performance Data Portal. Check it out. Part of our performance analysis umbrella items there. Okay. Another way that WECC efficiently and effectively mitigates for the reliability and security risks of the bulk power system is through our event analysis program. So kind of here's the connection. So situation awareness, through that program, we sort of have an awareness of what happens day in and day out. Not to the degree and level, of course, that operators do, but we have an awareness. And then the performance analysis program sort of collects that data, analyzes that data to understand sort of operations performance. The event analysis program looks at specific events, specific qualifying events that may happen. So the event analysis program is all about partnering with stakeholders to understand what happened, why it happened, with the end goal of helping folks learn about how to prevent those kinds of things from happening again in the future. That's pretty much what it's about. This too is a delegated function, and there's a lot of structure to it. It's really designed to look for the kind of events where there are common occurrences. So there are qualifying events that range from less severe all the way to more severe, and there's buckets and categories, and it's a highly structured program. So when events occur, the event analysis team, we engage with stakeholders that were involved with those events. We learn what has happened, and we do that primarily through, you can see, the event and performance analysis subcommittee. These groups have closed door meetings where you can get down and dirty and talk about the good, the bad, the ugly that happened with these events. So not everybody can attend those closed door meetings. However, when they do have public meetings, anybody's able to attend those. It's really important that folks are aware of the process and aware of the lessons learned that can come out of this process, that does come out of this process. You may not know that there are over 200, and this is at the ERS, with over 200 lesson learned documents that have been published as a byproduct of the event analysis work. And they cover a whole slew, huge range of topics. There was actually, I was talking to the manager of the group, James Hansen, for anybody that knows him. He was saying that, there was actually a lesson learned, an event happened in the West, which led to the creation of a lessons learned that was specific to that event. And a year later, the same exact event happened to a different company. And it happened because they didn't review the lessons learned. So there was a resource that was out there, but they didn't know it was out there. So I want to spread the word here that there are some lessons learned that can be a valuable resource for you and your company. And this program is really important because, as the old saying goes, a wise person learns from their mistakes, and a wiser one learns from others' mistakes. So I encourage you to be a part of the event analysis program, check out the lessons learned, and become one of those wiser ones. Got some links there if you want to find out a little bit more about that. Okay, moving on to another space, model development. WECC develops a lot of models. A lot of folks here probably work for companies that are responsible for operating the system, for planning the system. RC shops, TOP shops, BA shops. So you all know how important a good quality model is for those functions. I used to work for the kind of companies that did that kind of thing. So I think we can all appreciate the criticality of quality models for this kind of work. So this is another space where WECC works really hard to advance our reliability mission. For those, anybody familiar with Mod 32? Any Mod 32 people here? Okay, a few of you. So I think it's requirement R4. It mentions a requirement that has something like the planning coordinators need to make the models available to the ERO designee, right? So in the Western Interconnection, WECC is that ERO designee. So we are, as that designee, we're responsible for building interconnection-wide cases. So this is how it kind of works. Each planning coordinator builds their own models. They send it to WECC, and then WECC sort of stitches all those models together so that it ends up being a high-quality, functioning, interconnection-wide model. And this is true for the base cases. This is true for the dynamic model. We also develop other models. We develop what's called an anchor data set. An anchor data set it's a nodal production cost model and a corresponding power flow case. A lot of entities find a lot of use for the anchor data set. We also support the building of short circuit models. We have a probabilistic resource adequacy model. This year, we're starting to do that with the ServM software. Historically, we've done that through an in-house developed software. But the future, we're looking into developing EMT, electromagnetic transient models. This is a future thing. We're looking into what the needs are in that space and what WECC's role is going to be in that space. So a lot of fun and interesting development on that front. So I mentioned about the stitching together of models. This is a space where it's really, really important that WECC work with our partners in the industry to get these models developed and to get them developed in a way that is really high quality. So we do this primarily through a handful of WECC committees, and you can see them listed there. All of these WECC committees, they have open meetings. So if you go to WECC's website, go to the calendar, you can see where these model development committees meet and how often, and they're open meetings. So if you ever want to learn a little bit more about, get some exposure to how these models are made and see how the sausage gets made, you're welcome to join in and listen in. These models can be shared by anyone who demonstrates a legitimate need for them. And there's a strong likelihood that if you're a TOP shop, if you're a BA shop, if you're an RC shop, there's a strong likelihood that you're using one or more of these models that WECC develops. It's kind of the bread and butter of some of the things we do at WECC. So those are the models. Another space that we are very actively involved in is reliability assessments. So this is another WECC delegated function. NERC has an obligation under the rules of procedure to conduct reliability assessments. And that part also includes some delegated responsibilities for WECC. So we kind of do this in two spaces. One of those spaces is support of ERO assessments, right? So NERC has a lot of studies that they do. Many of them are done every year. And all of the regions work with NERC to support the execution of those studies. So there's a summer reliability assessment every summer. There's a winter reliability assessment every winter, and there's a long-term reliability assessment that's done every year. And that now includes a probabilistic assessment. And then there's miscellaneous other studies that may come up from time to time. The interregional transfer capability study is one example of one of those kinds of studies. So big role is for WECC is to work with and support NERC in some of those ERO assessments. We also conduct our own assessments, and these are some that are done specifically for the Western Interconnection. Our primary example of a regularly done study is the Western Assessment of Resource Adequacy. We've been doing this since I think 2020. And it's kind of a version of the long-term reliability assessment. It's structured similarly, but we kind of branch off and do some things that are specific for the West, show some results that are shown a little differently from the way they are in the ERO-wide assessment. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we think they provide a lot of value. So the Western Assessment this year, we published it back in November. It's on our website, and it's not a report, so to speak. It's kind of done in more of an online friendly format, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. So I encourage you to go check out our Western Assessment of Resource Adequacy. Okay. So WECC's mission to effectively and efficiently mitigate the reliability and security risks to the Western Interconnection's bulk power system. Yes. Now, if we're going to accomplish that mission, we need to know what the risks are, right? So, and we need to be able to zero in on the ones that are the highest priority, and that's where we need to focus our resources. You can read all about that concept in our long-term strategy. So our risk management process is the way we sort of bring that to fruition. Historically, we've had a process that every 2 years we develop what's been called the reliability risk priorities, and we're essentially kind of replacing that process with this risk management process, and it's fairly new. We really started pulling this together as a thing back in, I guess, 2022. So we're still learning, we're still growing, but it's really, we envision this as really becoming kind of the cornerstone that really drives what we do and what we focus on. We have a team that's working with the stakeholders to identify existing risks and emerging risks to reliability and security, and this is kind of at an interconnection-wide level. This isn't talking about entity level risks per se. All of this is based on, if you've heard of it, it's ISO 31000 risk management. Anybody here heard of ISO 31000? Okay, a few hands. So that diagram, we did some R&D, rip off and duplicate. R&D for the process, risk management is a pretty set field. There's a solid process, so there was no need for us to reinvent the wheel, so we used that wheel. It's got some components to it. You see risk identification in there, you see risk analysis in there, you see risk evaluation, and finally risk treatment and some other things that sort of surround that. So the idea is we want to partner with stakeholders to put this through a more technically rigorous process. And the process allows the risks that impact the interconnection are understood. And the way they're understood is through those things that sort of fall down in the middle of that chart there. So analysis is all about sort of the technical rigor that looks at a bunch of different aspects to help us determine the likelihood and the impact of a risk, right? You've probably seen some of those charts, likelihood, impact. So that's analysis. And then in the evaluation space, we have to make some tough decisions about which risks we do something about. versus which risks we sort of tolerate and accept. So this is all about risk appetite here. And if we can tolerate, so the question is, can we tolerate the likelihood and impact where it is? Or do we really feel like we need to reduce the likelihood or reduce the impact of that risk? So that's kind of the those decisions are made in that evaluation stage. And finally, treatment is, okay, I've made a decision that we need to do something about this risk. We need to take some kind of action. And this is where treatment falls in. And the goal of the treatment phase is to reduce either the likelihood or the impact or both. So we all get input from this from our stakeholders. Stakeholder participation in this space is absolutely vital. We have a sort of a top-level technical committee called the Reliability Risk Committee. That's what this committee is all about. It's all about this risk management process. And that's where we get the most input from today. We're trying to continually improve the process, the risk management process itself, and improve the way we get input about these risks from the stakeholder community. These meetings that the RRC, Reliability Risk Committee, has, these are public meetings. They meet 3 times a year. I believe our next one is coming up this summer. And they're public meetings. So if you want to listen in, you are welcome to. And I encourage you to, if you want to jump into the risk space. Now, one question that you all might have is, how does this risk management process sort of connect to your universe, the oversight universe? I'll try to answer that question this way. We have what's called a risk register that's associated with the risk management process. You can go online and see it under the RRC website. So this risk register, it serves as an input to what's known as the regional risk assessment process. And this is an ERO process that you may be familiar with. Ultimately, that feeds into the ERO CMEP IP, right? So once it lands in the CMEP IP, then it goes downstream there into sort of the oversight planning. So that's how those dots connect. Risk management, good stuff. And it's interesting, one of the things that we really have been purposeful about at WECC over the last several years is to really focus our language in our discourse about reliability risks, right? So even though we may be in the context of compliance, in a compliance discussion, we're talking about reliability risks. So you may hear WECC staff use that language more and maybe use the compliance language less. You can throw rocks at me if I'm wrong there, folks, but we're really focused on reliability risk. That's our mission, right? Okay, bringing it all together, finally, our last area that we're going to go over is strategic engagement. And our mission is kind of rises and falls on stakeholder engagement. We have an excellent department at WECC called Strategic Engagement that is all about stakeholder engagement, stakeholder partnerships. They're always looking for ways that we can add value, reliability and security value through our lots of various initiatives that you see here. So we have many. We have stakeholder groups. I mentioned the technical committees. A version of the technical committees is called an advisory group, and these are more temporary groups that are sort of stood up partnerships between WECC and stakeholders that are stood up to address a very specific issue. We pull together the right SMEs, we wrestle with the issue, we tackle the issue, and then disperse that advisory group and move on to the next issue. That kind of flexibility is working really well for us, so we want to continue to pursue that approach. We do a lot of outreach and training. We have a grid fundamentals course. Maybe some of you have taken that class. We have workshops like this one. Kudos to the people that have put this workshop on. Thank you for that. Good stuff. We have webinars. We have the Reliability in the West discussions. This is a thing that happens once a month. You can dial into those. They're on the calendar. We address a lot of great topics and have a lot of great speakers to help support that. And we have our WECC weekly newsletter that comes out. We have our monthly policy newsletter that comes out. And the strategic engagement group also really helps us move the ball forward on the development of a lot of WECC products. I mentioned the Western Assessment of Resource Adequacy earlier. We spent a lot of time working with the strategic engagement group to transform that product from a historic sort of classic technical report that's a PDF file that you have to sit down and wrestle with and read and commit some significant time to. We've worked with the strategic engagement group to transform that product into something that's an online format where you can go, you can read it and spend 15 minutes with it and walk away with some really rich, meaningful information in a short amount of time. And that's kind of our society these days. So that's where things are going. We also have policy analysis and educational opportunities. Good stuff. So one of the products that is the strategic engagement group leads the development of is what's called the state of the interconnection. It's really important to WECC that we develop these kinds of reliability-centric products that are valuable to stakeholders, and this is one example of that. This thing is published once a year in the spring. Our next one will be published in mid-May. So what this report's all about is it looks back at sort of the previous year and highlights the significant events that have sort of shaped our industry over the course of that year. And it's not the kind of report that issues findings and recommendations or anything like, it's not that kind of product. Instead, the objective of it is to provide WECC's perspective, right, independent partnership perspective, provide WECC's perspective on those significant issues and to bring awareness to them and to the developments that impact the reliability and security of the interconnection. It's in an online-friendly format. You can get a lot out of it in a short time. Like I said, our next one is published in May. I am at the end of the presentation, and just to sort of bring it all back, I've talked about a lot of those dots and colors that you see there, and I hope you have a little better understanding and appreciation for the other things that happen at WECC that work together alongside our oversight function to address our reliability risk. To address our mission, to address reliability, which is to address reliability risks. I won't quote it to make anybody say bingo anymore, but I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been valuable, and that concludes the presentation. So if anybody has any questions that Travis or Maley can answer, they'll be glad to take your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the overview. I think it helps us kind of visualize all the different elements that WECC does. I know for myself even, I didn't even realize all the breadth of everything that you guys cover under your umbrella. And if I'm understanding correctly, I think your slide in regards to risk management seems to really encompass all that you guys do to really meet that mission that you have in reducing risk and ensuring that we have a reliable and secure grid. So to that effect, there's been, questions in regards to, well, how do you guys kind of work between the teams in WECC, and how do you guys pull at that risk identification? And ultimately, how do you guys pull that into your monitoring activities, like in compliance oversight, we do see questions arise in regards to risk and controls as part of our engagements with you. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we've been kind of because this is so relatively new, to WECC, we started up the Reliability Risk Committee and the risk management process, and the whole concept of it is only a couple of years old. And some other regions have been doing this a lot longer than WECC has. Like, for example, CERC has been doing this for 10 plus years. And when we had conversations with them, they said, this risk management process that we have, it drives everything that we do, and sort of has tendrils that flow down into a lot of spaces. Because we're so early on in this, I smacked the microphone. I apologize for that. I'll stop flailing my arms around. This is a relatively new thing at WECC, and we are having conversations across the company to better understand. I mean, we really got the risk register kind of initially populated not too long ago. So I think we're really early in that process, and I think we have a lot of opportunity to over time more tightly integrate the risk management process, the outcomes from that process with all the functions that WECC does. So that's an area for growth for us, for sure.
Thank you. So it sounds like more to come.
Oh, much.
We'll get a little bit more insight into that and your strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm hopeful that a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we can come here and be really specific about how all that stuff really works tightly together. But that's our goal. That's our objective, to get the holistic approach to risk sort of set there. Yeah.
Thank you, Vic. We did get a question online. How does WECC separate event analysis root cause investigations from enforcement activities? There is a friction between the two where the root cause should be a learning experience and the entity must not be afraid to share information.
What I can tell you is that the event analysis process, of course, is not a compliance activity, of course. Now, one of the outputs from that process is called a brief report, right? So when an entity goes through the process, there's a brief report associated with that. That brief report is shared with the oversight team. However, the Event and Performance Analysis Subcommittee, when they have closed doors meetings, compliance, all those discussions, the outcomes of those discussions is not shared with compliance. The only thing that is shared with compliance is the brief report. That's the way it is today.
Thank you. One more. Should entities who are currently scheduled for a WECC audit this year expect to answer questions on the WECC risk register topics?
I'm sorry, I struggled to hear that. Can you
That's
say it
okay.
again?
I think I read it poorly. Should entities who are currently scheduled for a WECC audit this year expect to answer questions on the WECC risk register topics?
Oh, I can't answer what kinds of questions will or won't be asked in that topic, but I bet Kim can and Deb can. So Kim, can you take a swat at that?
Sure. Okay, can you hear me now? So we use the risk register to understand the risks, and it feeds into what we have in our compliance oversight plan and how we scope those engagements based on the risk and what we know about the entities. So the answer to the question is there probably are going to be questions that we will ask related to what's in the risk register during your engagements.
Okay. Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure.